Hi, it's Jeffrey Shaw here from Radio FM88 Australia, and we're broadcasting from Brisbane, Australia. It's our Thursday night regular show. It's obviously 7 o'clock Queensland time, 9 o'clock in New Zealand. 10 o'clock in New Zealand, I beg your pardon. And of course, my co-host who's sitting right above me, Andrena's 9 o'clock in the morning in the UK. And she's got a local resident from Mount Tamborine. We've had her on the show previously. And so it's a good rousing welcome to Shakti. And so, Andrena, you'd like to take it away?
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. Good day. Welcome wherever you are in the world. And if you're listening to the world replay, put my teeth in. It's my honour and privilege to have Shakti back again. Shakti is a dear, not old friend, a dear friend. And we had her on the show recently, and it was really excellent. But today's subject is going to be completely different, and this is going to be a really diverse subject for some. We're going to talk, Shakti's going to speak about rebirthing, and I know, and hello, our one and only Yvonne from Adelaide, welcome. So I know, I was going to ask you, I'm going to try and keep focused because there's so many avenues and tangents we can go off on this subject. I know for myself, I had one traumatic birth and the other one I chose to have a cesarean. But I was just wondering what the times that people say they've had a good birth, a normal birth where they've just sailed through, because speaking to different people, there's quite a high percentage that really have different traumas. So which we'll cover as we go through. So I would love you to share how you started, what brought you to be teaching and doing rebirthing sessions for people. So
lovely. Thank you, Andrena and Jeff. It's a real privilege to be here and to talk about my passion on rebirthing. I started 23 years ago when I was affected by my birth, which was a cord around the neck. And I found that with the trauma of a baby being born with the cord around the neck, created a feeling that there's always someone out to get you. There's always something after you. And that can create a victim mindset. And so how I started getting into it was I started showing interest because I needed help with family situations. And I found that they were very dysfunctional, and I would be falling out with siblings. My father was very volatile. And I found that it affected my working relationships, my friendships, the partners that I attracted to me were all of a very dominant nature. And my birth had so much to do with it because of the way that I was born, and I had the cord around my neck 3 times. So that sets up a mindset that death is inevitable and accidents happen, a mindset of being a victim to circumstances in all areas is a mindset that sets up your agenda for life unless you clear it. So that's what got me into rebirthing. Was I met a wonderful woman by the name of Sondra, and I was invited to do a rebirthing session with 100 people in one room, and I saw my own birth in the birthing experience.
Wow, amazing. I like that. Being born once is enough for me. Say no more. Yes. So I was thinking when you said about being like, we know that all the emotions that we're carrying when we give birth obviously affect the children and goes into their energy field. And obviously, like when my mum was carrying me, I mean, I'm not sure what was going on for her at the time, but I know she carried a lot of fear, which I've had to deal with in my life in different ways. So regarding the cord around the neck, because I often think, well, do people have a sensation all the time that there's something there energetically?
Yes, absolutely. And it can stir up other lifetimes of being beheaded or burnt at the stake or hung because of certain choices. And often that will be part of the birth trauma in this life. And so they find it difficult to wear polar necks or to wear chunky necklaces or to have anything around the neck. Sometimes they can have thyroid issues where they can be prone to a goiter. All of that is playing out their birth trauma, and not many people know about their birth unless they ask their mother before she passes. So it's a really good thing to document it and know more about it, because there's so many different types of births, and they all have an impact on the baby. It's 35 pounds of pressure on a tiny little skull of a baby being born naturally through the birth canal. 35 pounds of pressure is massive. It's so intense and it's so frightening for the baby, but they are programmed hormonally to go down the birth canal. And it's got 35 pounds of pressure pressing on that little body and the skull. So that can be quite traumatic in itself, let alone other complications.
Because I know, speaking for myself, I was just wondering, like my son, they couldn't get him out, so it was a full-on emergency right at the end. But I just think, well, when they can't get them out, is it that on some level they don't they don't want to come in on the earth plane?
It's, I know, all jokes aside, it's something we joke about, and when we have a baby that is overdue, we tend to make jokes and say, oh, it was very comfortable in there, thanks, had everything it wanted, it didn't want to be born. And that can be a mindset that is very real. It can be part of the mother not wanting to let go. She could have had an abortion or miscarriage beforehand, or other complications, or a stillborn, and then when she's in labor for this birth, it can affect the mother greatly of not wanting to let go. It can be the baby not wanting to let go or leave, because we are very, very highly spiritual beings living a human existence. We know what we're coming into. We know on a spiritual level that we're coming to a very physical energy, leaving the cosmos, coming into a physical energy. So that is part of it, very much so. And, with the cesarean birth, that can bring a lot of guilt on the mother by having to have a cesarean birth, especially an emergency one. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something that was in the program. It's all of a sudden an emergency, and that means that she feels she's got no choice, and then the baby feels it's got no choice. So one thing, it sets up the mother to feel extremely guilty that she hasn't been able to give everything to her baby, and its rite of passage and its way of being able to be born how it's programmed, because when the baby goes down the birth canal, it contracts and takes on natural bacteria, which sets up a beautiful platform for good gut health. So, there's guilt and remorse and resentment that the mother goes through. And then for the child can either be set up for being fearful of blood and sharp instruments, or can feel extremely resentful because there's this mindset that everything's been taken away, all the choices, how they were set up and programmed to go was all taken away. So often they can feel very controlled by establishments or authority.
Hey, while you were talking there, I was remembering a story to do with butterflies and cocoons, and the story of when people actually step up and they help the actual butterfly open up the cocoon. And it turns out that butterfly really needed to burst out through the cocoon in order to get the fluid to go right through to its wings, so that it actually becomes a butterfly. When you were talking about that, and I was seeing the visualization of coming down the birth canal at 35 pounds, is there some sort of stimulant? I mean, I think you basically started it, but coming down through there and the compressions and all that stuff, and then is there some blood movement that starts flowing right through the body? That you talked about the gut thing that comes through. Is there other aspects there that touches base, just like that butterfly coming out through the cocoon?
Absolutely. It's exactly like the cocoon and the butterfly. There's hormonal releases, Jeff, that come through from the mother and also from the child's own body fluids. There's hormones that are released to create contractions. Even when the water breaks, that's all part to do with the mother and baby working together. And the hormones are released through fluid in the connective tissues, and that hormone release stimulates the contractions, and for the birth canal to be starting to open up and contract as long as it takes. You know, for a woman it feels like it's forever, and I suppose for the father as well, if he's there in support. And so those hormones totally are beautifully created to create this natural form of the birth canal to slowly contract and go through its stages. And it's a really beautiful connection, because when you see the butterfly come out of its cocoon, it doesn't just pop out. It's quite a process, and you'll see the fluid that is stimulated for the butterfly to be able to move through the cocoon, because even though the cocoon is quite soft, it's very difficult for the butterfly to break through that. They're the tiniest little things, and they're so fragile, but it's the hormones that break open that shell and of the cocoon, the structure of the cocoon. And with the birth canal, the same thing. It's a hormone release that the baby is signified to release through its body, which connects with the women, the mother, to contract and open up the passage. And that's why with a cesarean birth, the baby feels quite deceived, disappointed, resentful, because, you know, it's such a natural thing to go down the birth canal. And when the baby goes down the birth canal, because it can take a while for some it can be 2 hours, but that baby collects through its orifices, the nose, the mouth, the ears, bacteria in the birth canal that creates good gut flora. So you've got good bacteria and bad bacteria, and it picks up a natural gut flora bacteria that helps build good gut health. And then if the baby is breastfed, even more so, it's creating beautiful gut flora and really setting up the baby to have a very good healthy bowel. And it's such a healthy way to go. So if it doesn't get that, and even breastfeeding, if the baby doesn't get breastfed, there's a real feeling of missing out. And these babies have an attitude where they have a starting off of everything's all a bit hard, that they haven't had the support that they've wanted, and it can make them quite bitter and angry and resentful. And if we don't clear that through working through breath work or modalities that help clear energy, I find breath work brilliant to strengthen the energy body and clear the cells in the body. The cells take on the memory, and it holds on to this memory, and it can be there for life unless it's cleared. But it will have something to do how they feel about themselves and others.
Okay, so what about forced deliveries? How does that impact on the child?
Yeah, the forceps, with having forceps is like an inducing. It's very similar to inducing with a chemical or hormone or gel, same sort of thing. But with the forceps, it has more catastrophic effects on the baby because it disfigures the baby. And when the child is forced and pulled out of the womb, out of the birth canal, it sets up a feeling of not being able to create, not being connected to God. So you'll often find babies that have had forceps will be quite denying of a God force, of an enlightenment or spirituality, because they're quite angry at God because they've been forced to be born and not being able to be able to do it themselves. If they were just left alone and not pushed or rushed. And these people hate being told what to do, and they can be quite cantankerous. They can be such moody, grumpy souls, poor things, because they feel pushed and pulled and shoved, and they become quite rebellious children, actually. And they can often, if they're not helped with this, they will create heart disease, or as teenagers can often turn to drugs because they just want to escape.
That makes sense. But I know, referring back to mine, like Lee was £8.13, so he was far too big, so they just couldn't get him out. So, and I was going to have natural child, excuse me, natural. I wasn't even going to have gas and air. I went to all these classes and I had everything on the list, but and he had failed forceps 3 times. He's a real healthy male, and but so what I was going to say was, he actually had stitches on his head, and was all bruised, and then of course because he was stuck, then we were just taken off as an emergency. Well, I think I had so much epidurals that I just didn't even know what was going on. I was totally out of it, and I know we were on the brink of staying or going. It was just like that. But anyway, we both stayed, and here we are, thank goodness. So I know on a deep level that must have affected him deeply. But I can honestly say I'm not aware of any major things that have affected him in his life. But obviously I'm not with him 24/7. So, and I know myself, like I've been able to do energetic work with. I think I had a rebirthing session years ago with you, which will help to clear that energy from myself, but also from my son. So there are ways of being able to help clear this. If you don't do it for if the children don't do it because they don't take on board everything like this, you can do it for them, can't you, on an energy level to help them?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can clear a lot of karma for children under 18 years old. Often when I work with children, I work through the parents as proxy. If the children are quite young, and the parents, they clear a lot of karma for the children, because the children do take on a lot of the parents' anxiety and worries about a lot of things and not realizing it. They're like animals. They love us so much, they'll take on our problems. And we don't want them to. We really don't. We need to take responsibility for our own. So the more we can clear for our children and your grandchildren as well, it can make a big difference. And I can do that in a rebirthing session, and I can do it online. It doesn't have to be in person. But I just want to talk about, just getting back to your son and their with the forceps, what can happen with children with that have been a forceps birth or inducing. It's a similar sort of thing, but forceps of course are more physical. Is what can happen, and if it's boys, they can sort of be the lads that will not be that connected to animals in a very gentle, compassionate way. So they'll be, unless you get it out of them, they can be the sort of toddler that will grab a cat by the tail and swing it around, or put a cat in a rubbish bin just to see if it can get out, you know. I knew it. I could see that laughter. So you've experienced things with him that he would have done, like you would have thought, oh my goodness, what did you do that for? And of course, it's only because he just doesn't have that attachment. It's like it's something they've got to learn, and they don't often feel it. And also with forceps, they can sometimes, when things get a little bit hard, they'll become introverted. They'll go inward, you know, because they just have trouble trusting you know, outside situations or people. It takes a while for them to trust.
What about...
So, hang on a second. So,
no, excuse me.
as a mere male, I'm just saying. So, Andrena talked about epidurals, and I suppose that goes with when the midwifery team or obstetricians do the cut just to open up and the vulva there. So, whilst that's taking place and the woman's going through that with the baby itself, pick up that energetically, what's going on there, and feeling the pain of the mother?
Yeah, they do. Everything crosses. It's a good question. Thank you, Jeff. I'm sure Andrena had a good one too. But what
now?
you'll have to write it down. What actually happens is the baby is aware of the pain, yes, but aware of the fear more, if that makes sense. So babies pick up on emotions and pain. It's not so much the physical pain they pick up on. They pick up on the fear and the anxiety that the mother is going through, because the baby is such a evolved spiritual being. They're just dependent on us physically. But as far as spiritually goes, and emotionally and consciously, they're so highly evolved, such intelligent beings, all babies. And so they'll pick up on the fear and the emotions that she's feeling from that pain. Does that make sense? So what actually happens is when the woman is drugged up or epidurals and she doesn't know what's going on, because the poor thing's so drugged up and has to be like a general anesthetic for a cesarean as well, or I think they do different things now, but they still got to drug them up a fair bit because it's an operation. And what the baby is feeling is abandonment, because the mother is not present energetically. She's just not there, right? So they pick up on that and they feel abandonment. And so when there's complications with the mother, like if it's hemorrhaging, drugs, having to be rushed off to surgery because the placenta's retained, that baby feels abandoned, because this is a team you're talking about. This is a team that has been programmed right from the beginning of time by our divine creator to work together as a team without intervention. And so that baby is aware that something's not right. She's not connected on an energetic level. And so they have feelings of abandonment. And that's very hard for the mother, because a lot of times she's got no choice. You know, I got rushed off to surgery because I retained the placenta with my first child. So I just wasn't there for her right up front, but my husband was. So, of course, they've got this amazing close bond. But I'll tell you something, I've just got to get this out, otherwise I might forget it. When you first have your baby, and when that child, straight away when it's put in your arms, look into its eyes. If the listeners get this, it is so important, guys. You have got to connect on an energy level, regardless of what's happened during the birth. Even if you retain the placenta and there's complications and you're drugged up, whatever, and you're rushed off to surgery, make sure as soon as that baby's put in your arms, because they do put them in your arms for a couple of minutes, to connect, or good midwives do anyway, look into their eyes, look right into the eyes, and look deep into the eyes for as long as you can until they take them away if there's complications, because those first few minutes are vital for that energy connection, for them not to feel abandonment.
Yeah, amazing, eh? It's like, and I don't know, because I don't know anybody who's had a baby lately, but I'm just wondering, like, going back when I had it, I don't think things have changed that much along the way, have they? In the way that they do things, you still hear of different things going on.
They do tend to do a lot of cesareans now than they used to in our day, though, Andrena.
Yeah, sad, isn't it? But, and I know with Hayley, she was the second one, because we'd had so much trauma with the first one that I thought there's no way was I going to go through that again. And I chose to have a cesarean. Looking back, I mean, that was a choice I made, and I've got no regrets. But there's times I think, I wonder what would happen if I'd tried and then, but anyway, I didn't. But yeah, so I often wonder. So, because obviously I would have been, because I chose to have it the easy way, I suppose, so that I wouldn't have all that trauma again. But obviously it would have still been in my cells to go through, carried on through. The other thing I was thinking, what about, because lots of people have had abortions or miscarriages, or, the baby's been born and then they've lost it. And then when they have another one, then they would have, all of that, hurt, loss and everything would go into energetically into the next one, wouldn't it?
It's a really good question. Everyone is a different soul. And so there's no reason why the second child would take on those emotions.
Right.
In the birth situation, because everyone are different souls. The only time that second child that was born and everything was fine would be affected by the loss of a miscarriage or an abortion would be if the mother is still holding on to those emotions, and then that baby will pick up that something's wrong, and that baby will feel that it's them, that something's wrong. But those are all that energy from the miscarriage or abortion doesn't go on to that next child.
Right.
Because they're separate souls, lovey. They're separate souls. And there's no, it's over. The miscarriage, the abortion is over. The only emotions that would pass on to the child is the mother still holding on and taking it out on that second child. And some do, and I know it's cruel, and they will take it out on the second child like there's nothing wrong with you when you were born very easily and everything was right. So then the damage of that can be that child feels overprivileged. So with it, some say, oh, but I had a normal birth. I had nothing wrong. Nothing went wrong with the mother. Nothing went wrong with the child. And so, oh, there's nothing wrong with me. I must be perfect. But I tell you, someone who's had a natural birth and everything went well, the way the ego is and the human consciousness is, they will set themselves up to think, oh my God, there's something wrong with me because I'm not like everybody else. I had a perfect birth. My mum was fine. Everything went well. So what's wrong with me? Because everyone else I know had problems. Oh my goodness, there's something wrong with me. Can you see how we set ourselves up on a conscious level? And the ego comes in and it's like, oh my goodness, there's something wrong because I'm not like everybody else. So there's a complication in every birth unless we clear it, and we clear it with the breath. And when we work with the traumas, there's 5 big traumas. There's the birth trauma, which is what we've just been talking about how you've been born.
Hey, can I just interrupt there? Hey, what about when the mother goes full term, and then the child comes out and is virtually stillborn. Or sometimes you hear in some of the clairvoyant demonstrations that the baby just came in, touched the earth plane and left, as if that's what its journey was to do, to teach some lessons between the mother and the child, or the father and the mother, or group constellations. How does that impact into you're just about to talk about the 5. I just wanted to throw that one in as part of the trauma.
So just finish the question. How does it impact?
How does that impact on doing a rebirthing when you've got the mother who's had that living, breathing soul for 9 months, but didn't realize perhaps the last month it was actually stillborn, or something had happened, or it's come through live, but then it's arrived and then it's touched the earth plane and left, and it's just had that major impact. So,
well, on a soul level for the baby, it has no effect at all. They just go on to another life or another reincarnation. But the mother, it leaves the deepest wound of the soul, and they feel that it's taken on an energy that they'll never get through. They feel totally responsible, and they feel that they've done something wrong. They will always feel that loss. So what we do is in a rebirthing session, we take them through that birth again, and we go through and connect them to the soul of that baby, so they feel they're always with them. There's no loss.
So would you like to go through?
Sorry, lovey, does that answer the question? It's a lot more simpler than what you think. We've just got to get the mother through the loss, and the way that we do that with the rebirthing is we help take her through that process with a better outcome and connection of connecting to the baby, that there's not that memory of death. And we go through connecting the soul of the mother and the child together, so they feel they're always with them, and it's okay to have more children.
Right, Jocelyn's asking a question. If the mother had an abortion or stillbirth, can the same soul come back in the next pregnancy?
Oh, great questions tonight. It's awesome. Wonderful. With the energy of an abortion or stillborn, sometimes the child can come back very quickly. Sometimes it'll come through as a grandchild. Sometimes that soul will come through as a sibling. Sometimes it'll come through as a niece or nephew. So very much so. If that is the destiny of that soul, they can come back as the next child. I feel very strongly. Sometimes it depends on the timing, and in my training we learned that it depends on the timing. And if it's just 2 or 3 years, sometimes that soul can come back. If it's destined to be in that family, it will make it happen. And the soul of that baby will definitely make it happen. The mother's got no control over it, that soul will come. And so I feel very strongly the 2 terminations that I had when I was younger were that the souls that came back were the children that I had many years later. And I feel that connection was there, even though it was, 10, 20 years difference. I feel very much they were destined to come, but the time wasn't right. And those souls had the choice to stay or to come back at another time. So yes, absolutely. And guess who recognizes the soul when it comes back to the mother as another child or a granddaughter or a niece or nephew? Guess who recognizes it? It's the grandmother. It's the grandmothers. The grandmothers are so tuned in. And I need to tell you that before we conceive, the child, the baby, the soul of the baby is in the energy of the grandmother for 2 months. For 2 months is in the soul of that grandmother, and then and in her aura, in her energy field, waiting to come in. I saw my son as a ball of light where my mother was staying, and she was in the room with her, and my son was in her energy, ready to be conceived a time later. And so that child, that energy, that soul will be in the grandmother's aura for 2 months until conception, and then it comes into the body of the mother. So the grandmother is always the one to notice when a soul returns to that soul family. So let's hear it for grandmothers.
Woohoo!
I'm not a grandmother yet, but yeah, let's hear it for grandmothers. They're priceless. The nice ones.
My mate Cameron, he had this dream where this girl, this woman came to him and said, I want you to conceive, or have a bit of lovey-dovey with his wife, and I want to come through. And so he spoke to his wife and said, I've just had this dream where this woman wants to come through, and she's told us when we have to go and have a bit of ta-ta-ta. So they had a bit of chat, and he said, "Oh, I don't think I want it at my age, So, so now we have a battle of wills. Who takes? Well, obviously, Cameron and his wife obviously decided they wouldn't bend to the will of this woman who wanted to come through him. So, but is that how it works? I mean, who's got the right of way here?
If the soul is destined to be born to a certain family, the family can, if they take strong measures for it not to happen, it won't happen, but it'll come way in some other area. That soul is destined to be in that soul family. So if it doesn't come with a husband and wife, it'll come through an auntie, an uncle, a niece, a nephew.
Right.
It'll come some other way, greater, going down the lineage, and they'll come through even if it's in a different lifetime. They'll come through to that soul group regardless. So the soul of the energy of the baby, it will, when it chooses its parents, it'll come through. It has that choice that it can override. It's a divine creation, because if God left it up to the husband and wife, with Cameron and his wife, then not a lot would happen in a creative field. People would be more selective in what they do, and all those accidental pregnancies, and they're all meant to happen. Everything is a divine plan of God's divine plan and a destiny. And they'll even come through an adoption. Well done, Jocelyn. Well done.
Actually, funny you should say that, because Cameron was adopted.
Yeah, they'll come through adoption. I tell you, the soul, the soul energy, God has planned that it is as it is. And if it left it up to the women, mums and dads that were wishy-washy and indecisive and no, I'm too old, well, or not financial or not the right time, well, that's fine. But that soul will come through. And yes, well done, Jocelyn, even through adoption, lovey. And sometimes adopted children can take on the looks of their adopted parents. True. You would swear they are their children. And hair, eye color, everything, personality, nature.
It leads to the story of the champions born or champions made, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. And everything's energy. If we just understand everything is energy, even right down to the cellular structure of the baby being born. So, but it does have a lot to do with the choices. How a baby is born has a lot to do with the choices we make in life. So it's important to, in a rebirthing session, what we do is we teach people a connected conscious breath, because there's 21 different types of way to be born that can cause complications. And even, if you were born a boy and your parents wanted a girl, that has a massive effect on the baby. Massive. So that little girl will end up a tomboy, because she'll try her darndest to please her father, because the bond between a father and daughter is very, very strong. But if he wanted a boy and she's and had a girl and turned out as a girl, there's always this feeling that she's not good enough because she's not a boy. So she'll do her darndest to be strong and resilient and play football and swing from trees. And it's the other way around too. The mother and son are very close. There's always a very special bond there. But if he keeps getting told, oh, you were meant to be a girl.
Yeah.
It has a traumatic effect on them. So
I've just had that recently with a friend who's 70 years old. His parents have now passed away, but now he's decided that, he's definitely decided he's going to be female. So he's now taken that on board.
Do you know, apparently, which really shocked me recently, is that they are designing DNA of gender for babies. That is shocking to hear that this is in the future, that they will abort a gender of a baby. If the parents don't want a boy, they'll abort it, and then they'll work on the genetics like IVF, that it's got, to organize a baby by design, it was called. And this is coming in the future, and we really don't want that. That's just going to set up a disastrous communities. The damage that China did by saying they can only have one baby, one child. Do you remember that when we were growing up? And, in the 70s and 80s, possibly even the 90s, which seems so long ago, doesn't it? And they would only let them have one child. That has caused so much damage, because if they lost a child, they couldn't have any more. And those children were wrapped up in bunny rugs and so overprivileged and spoiled. It's created a demographics of children that are absolutely damaged emotionally and psychically, because everything was just put on them as one child, no siblings, difficult to socialize, many problems. So now China have changed it, that they can have more than one child, because they started to create a nightmare.
Well, their problem was they only wanted males, and they were finding out the sex of the baby. So if it was a female, they'd abort it. And so their major problem is there's a lack of female breeding stock. So they've been going to Vietnam. They've been going into Cambodia.
Yeah.
They're actually going to other countries that have an Asian feel for it, and actually buying those females and bringing them back to China. I mean, it's amazing sort of trade that's going on.
The thing is, Jeff, India have been getting rid of female babies for centuries. Unfortunately, there's extremes in India and China, extremes of extreme poverty, extreme wealth, extreme good, extreme bad. And even though rebirthing originates from India, and there's so much spiritual enlightenment in India, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that is quite cruel and corrupt too. And they would often do away with female babies. So it really sets up bad communities, and of course it goes into the DNA of babies, because of what the mother is feeling too. So the trauma of how a person is born affects the rest of their life. So when we do a rebirthing session, I teach people how to breathe properly, and it's a connected breath, like a figure eight lying on its side. And it's quite a conscious breath. So it's quite a fast breath, and it's connected. And what happens when a person breathes this way for a period of time, I've got to keep them breathing a certain way that the inhale's connected to the exhale. It releases toxins in the cells, and that toxic energy can be the birth trauma, the death urge, the parental disapproval syndrome, also religious syndrome, and the death urge. 5 biggies that run people's lives. As if the birth trauma isn't enough, we have a death urge, and a lot of people are going through their death urge since COVID. The whole planet is in the death urge. So when we do a rebirthing session, I have a person lying. I used to have a mattress, now they're on a bed. And we go through this rebirthing session of teaching them how to breathe properly by belly breathing. And the inhale's connected to the exhale. And there's no breaks, no holds, no gaps, no forcing. And when they're breathing in and out the nostrils, it stimulates the right brain and the left brain. And so it releases toxins out of the cells. And it can cause a bit of emotion and a bit of trauma, but some people will see their own birth. When I first did it, I heard my mother in pain, and I could see myself go down the birth canal. It was quite daunting, but it taught me that I wanted to learn more about this, and it helped me release the birth trauma about having the cord around the neck. So it was a beautiful way to learn how to heal myself in this, turbulent time of always feeling a victim. And having the cord around your neck can often make you feel someone's out to get you. So you set yourself up that you end up getting hurt by people, which is what I did.
So how long does this, when you work with people, how long does a session usually take?
Well, I have them breathing for an hour in this particular conscious connected breathing. And it can be quite arduous for some, especially if they've had a lot of operations and been on drugs. They'll feel quite wary, but our job is to keep them breathing. And then about half an hour to an hour to help them to process what's come up for them. So it takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I always send them a video to explain about rebirthing so we don't use up that valuable time in the session. And I always give them a cup of tea at the end to ground them. But the processing at the end is just as important as the rebirthing session, because you can have someone go through the rebirthing session and I can see all this dross and negative energy leaving their body. And it's like black mist. It's horrible. It's negative energy. And so then I get them to roll over on their side, and all of a sudden they'll just burst into tears, or just everything will just all come up and release. And then they just feel so much better and so much lighter afterwards, because all the trauma and toxins from that trauma come out of the cells and come out through the breath. And they feel so much more peaceful and enlightened, and like there's a weight off their shoulders.
Oh, I bet it's massive.
Yeah, well, there's a picture there that I've sent you. It's the energy body taken by Killian Photography. Now, Killian Photography takes auras and it shows energy. So this is a thumbprint of a person going through a rebirthing session. And so doing the conscious connected breathing, I'm also giving them affirmations to say that dissolve the death urge. So I get them to repeat affirmations in their mind while they're breathing. And that just helps release as well. So they don't have to make anything happen. They just got to breathe. They've just got to focus on breathing the right way. And I keep on top of that all the time, watching their skin color, watching their eye movements, watching any stiffness or tetany in the hands, which is negative energy leaving the body. So this picture is a Killian Photography showing the thumbprint of a person going through a rebirthing session. So the orange in the middle is the physical body. That's their thumbprint pressing on the plate. The white is the life force energy they're breathing into the cells of their body. So the actual, in a rebirthing session, what you are actually doing is energizing the light body. And what you're doing is you are bridging. I wanted to write it down, you're bridging the gap between the physical body and God. And that is the perfect proof of what happens, because the before photo shows just orange. And then in the middle of this rebirthing session, they're right in the middle of it, that white is God force, prana, chi, ki, whatever you want to call it, whatever country you've grown up in, it's all God force energy. And that is filling the body of pure white light, cleansing every cell in the body with pure white light. The rebirthing bridges the physical body and source, God force, whatever you feel connected to.
Amazing, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And until you really feel it, it's quite amazing the changes in someone even after one session.
That's what I was going to ask you. Sometimes is it for some people that they have to have a few sessions?
Well, I trained with Sondra and Leonard, who were the founders of Rebirthing from back in the 70s, when Babaji manifested and grew a body out of energy in the Huracan cave. And that's a story on its own. That's Babaji there. He was a 2,000-year-old yogi. He has manifested his body through just pranic energy 3 times on the earth plane. And the last time that he did was in 1975 in the Huracan ashram in the north of India. And that's when Leonard and Sondra visited the ashram there. And they met him, and he taught them about rebirthing, and he channeled it through Leonard, and Leonard brought it to the Western world because it was only just ever in India. And Babaji grew for 10 years. He got older, his body changed, but he came to the ashram as an 18-year-old young man, and this is him there. And the chandan is the turmeric paste on the forehead with a sandalwood spot in the third eye, to clear the mind during a rebirthing session. And then the chandan, which is a turmeric yellow paste on the throat to clear the throat. So when someone is doing a rebirthing, when I feel the energy shift and their body bridging in connection to the pranic energy and the God force, I paint the chandan on their forehead and their throat to clear their mind and to clear their throat, so that they have a safe journey in releasing all the sankharas, which are inhibitions and fears and trauma from birth.
So if somebody's having a session with you over Zoom, so I take it like, so I imagine, say I lay down here and then I'd have my computer in front angled so that you could see my breathing, and
Yes.
but obviously would you do that energetically?
I would do it energetically, absolutely. And thank you, Andrena. Great question. And there's a process, a ceremony that we do, and there's a process. And some have said they've literally felt my fingers go across their forehead and the third eye open up, and then the throat, and they've actually felt it. Which is so lovely, and it's all about energy. And so they lie down on a massage table or couch or bed, and they have their laptop on a little table in the upper part of their body, the head to the breastbone, just that around this upper quadrant area. And then we go through the whole session then. And Sondra does exactly the same work all around the world. We do it. It's just working out the time difference. but it works beautifully. And I'm watching the whole time, the eye movements, the color of the skin, the movement of the body, the breath in the chest and in the throat. I know exactly what's going on and how to guide them through this. And I listen to the breath. I listen to how the body responds, because my job as a rebirther is to hold the space for you, for my client.
So what?
Just Andrew, he's just come in. He obviously wasn't listening, so he needs to go at 53 minutes and listen to you saying Babaji in India and Sondra Ray and her mate was there. Yeah, got taught how to do it. Okay.
Yes.
Right,
Absolutely.
Andrew,
And I trained with both of them and lived in with them in an ashram style retreat and worked very closely one-on-one with them and also with other rebirthers. I feel really blessed because Leonard all passed away about a year ago, and Sondra Ray, she's 81 and she's in Washington in America, still traveling the world doing amazing work.
It's funny because I was in Glastonbury. I'd spoken to Sondra Ray when I was in Australia. We were talking over Skype, and then years later I was in Glastonbury going down the high street, and she was coming up the high street. So she was doing a retreat at the Glastonbury Abbey. So
how lovely!
Yeah, so that was a nice surprise.
She goes, she has gone to Russia. They're right into rebirthing, the Russians. They've got so much to clear there, many lifetimes, and, a lot of trauma, a lot of suppression. Very, very tough, strict country. She does a lot of work in Israel and wherever she can go, she does great work. But I love doing retreats, but since COVID, going online seems to please everybody.
I was thinking, as you do, do you have anybody come to you before they give birth to their babies? Because obviously, like years down the track now, people are much more aware of energy and all of these things. And so I know for me now, if I was going through that process, I would want to do whatever I could to help that baby come through. So do you ever have anybody come to you beforehand?
Yes.
For help?
Yeah, absolutely. And they have the most beautiful pregnancy and birth. I must admit, I leave it up to clients, but I always recommend 10 sessions because 10 sessions, we crack the case. It just cracks the case, and it all depends what a person needs to clear. But a lot of traumatized people addicted to drugs and alcohol, people that have been born through rape or incest. I've had 85-year-olds that do a rebirthing with me, and they've seen themselves being sexually molested at 2 or 5, and I really know how to hold the space. I'm a double Cancerian with a Scorpio moon, so I'm a bit of a mama bear, and so sometimes I've just held people and just rocked them and held them while they're going through what they're seeing. And it's not to frighten anybody, but some things can come up that have been hidden, but they have known on a spiritual level something's not right, and they've been living with it for 83 years. And then they were molested at 2 by a janitor when they lived next to a school, and they always knew something was wrong, and their older siblings knew about it but never told them, and yet it came through in a rebirthing session. And this particular client just booked in for 1 session, and all that came up. So I said to her, I need to help you through this, and it may take 10 sessions. But I tell you what, she did take the 10 sessions and then became a brilliant artist.
Wow. Yeah.
At 85. At 85.
Wow.
And
there's hope yet for some of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And she would be 95 now.
Wow.
Still going strong, still living in the mountains, doing absolutely beautiful art. And I go away with tears in my eyes. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
when we've been able to clear their energy body. Some find it hard to breathe, and it takes more than one session to really get them into the process of how to breathe properly, because they've just had so much trauma, not just from birth but childhood, and they've suppressed a lot, and they find it hard to breathe properly, because
Right.
when we're born we get a tube shoved down our throat. It's quite abrupt and aggressive, held up by our feet or slapped on the bum, to breathe properly, and the placenta's cut way too soon.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds horrific, but it's like slapped on the ass. Welcome to planet Earth, and it's like, oh my God, I can't go back.
Yeah,
What was I going to
absolutely.
ask you then? Something popped in. Right, it's popped in and it's popped out again a minute.
Well, I'll interrupt. In our land of the long white cloud, some of their culture is the placenta is actually shared with all members of the immediate family, like the mother, the husband, and the children. So they all participate in what's really pure energetic food source, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and there's many different cultures that have wonderful ways of respecting the placenta, and the placenta has got amazing stem cell rejuvenation in it, and it's such an amazing organ. I say organ because to me it's fed the baby for 9 months. It belongs to the baby, not the mother. But when families share it in different cultures, it's quite lovely. The most perfect birth, of course, is a lotus birth. A lotus birth is a birth in water, and the baby is been allowed to just come of its own fruition, and gentle and in water, and it breathes beautifully, and everything is so gentle and loving, and the mother's calm, and water talks. Water is very calming, very soothing. And then the placenta is left on to just drop off a couple of weeks later. And the umbilical cord just dries up and drops off. And then if it's buried in the garden, it's very holy and very sacred to do that. And the baby breathes beautifully on its own. The bond between the mother and baby is just unsurmountable. It's just the most incredible thing. And
It's a shame that we don't do a lot of these things over this side of the world, isn't it?
I know.
But
Dolphinus.
be quiet. I was talking about the breath, because there's a lot of children have breathing problems, or people now are short of breath, or they use inhalers for asthma and things. Does this link back to? Could this be linked back to the birth process?
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of it's rough handling by doctors or nurses, and the cord, the tube shoved down their throat. There could also be the placenta could be pushing up against the baby. Like when my son was born, he was 9.5 pounds, and the placenta was massive. The midwife said they've never seen such a big placenta. And it actually pressed up against him and that's when the cord wrapped around his neck 3 times. And it affected his breathing, so he needed a bit of oxygen when he was born. And if they don't get to them soon enough and they don't have enough oxygen, it can cause brain damage. But it can cause breathing issues, and if they're not dealt with naturally, you like even croup is a natural thing of having a complication of having the cord around your neck when you're born, and a child can develop croup or asthma, and that can be the placenta pressing on them too much. There's not enough room. It can be problems when there's twins. There's not been enough room. That can cause breathing problems. Asthma can often be a cause of them, a cesarean birth or a forced birth. They've not had time to go down the birth canal in their own timing to collect good bacteria, to develop good, strong lungs and good gut bacteria, because the colon and the lungs are connected. And it can cause breathing problems. And if those children are taken off to the doctor because they've got a bit of croup or colic or asthma, they get caught up in the medical system, and then the inhalers and ventilators and cause so many problems. They're set up go on a path of drugs and medication, and that all just makes it worse.
I know. Excuse me. I met a guy in, it's here in the UK, and he used to go around schools with a mouth organ and flutes for all the children that had breathing problems. And he would get them doing, blowing away or, playing something which would help their breathing. And he said it changed half of the children, and I always say to people when they're having breathing problems, get yourself a flute or a harmonica and start practicing it. Open up your airways.
Well, over in Australia and New Zealand, they gave them recorders.
Yeah, I used to have one. And blowing up balloons. Get them blowing up balloons, If they don't want to play an instrument or they don't want to buy a wind instrument, then get them to blow up balloons and then squeeze them and have fun letting them out, and then blow them up and then squeeze them out, blow them up. Even as little as 2. Get them into blowing balloons, get their lungs exercise, get them into a sport. Even if they're coughing and spluttering, get them into blowing up balloons or into cardiovascular sports.
I know I spoke to a friend who said, who'd had the jabs, and she was saying ever since her breathing is not the same. So I might tell her to get herself a balloon. Have a go at the breathing techniques.
Yeah, because if you blow up a balloon, you're going to naturally inhale to get more air into your lungs to blow out that next breath to fill up that balloon. And so I say to parents, get a packet of balloons and get them at least a couple of times a week, blow up at least half a dozen balloons. Make it fun. And pop them all and say, oh, damn, you'll have to do it all again. Make it fun, make it fun. Or get them a recorder or get them a flute or, get them into the saxophone. Beautiful instrument. Beautiful. I love the sax. I think the sax is sexy.
It's the closest instrument to the voice, human voice. Hey, my question relates to IVF, and there's one particular lady who went through it in New Zealand and ended up with twins, 4 girls, 1 boy. How does that impact on all 5 children and their mother and their father, and the interaction between those 5 babies?
If they were born naturally, they'll be very community orientated. If they were induced or forceps or things were rushed or chemically or drugged, straight away they're going to, things are crowded, so they're going to be people, they're going to want their own space. They're all going to be the same star sign, so they're all going to have their little idiosyncrasies and little struggles, and they're all going to have similar personality analysis and traits, even though they're all individual souls, but they're always going to feel they're either going to go either way. And I think there was one boy, yeah, that one boy is going to want his space big time. So he will want to have his own space. He will be the type of young lad that will want to be an author or go off and create different things. The girls will be extremely social, and they'll always want to be in community and crowds of people. I guarantee that that is the way. If it was a natural birth and they could all come at their own time, most often they do cesarean when it's triplets, quads, or, you know, when it's more than 3, often they do cesarean. But most of all, the boy will want his own space, and he will be quite introverted, and the girls will always want to get people together. They'll be very community orientated. To know more about the birth would describe the issues that they'll have.
We'll have to go on Google, look them up. Lawson twins. The Lawson twins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, it all depends how they were birthed, but I feel normally when it's more than 2 or 3, they do cesarean. So they'll be quite competitive. They'll all be very competitive, but the lad will want to go off on his own, and you know, he'll want his own space.
Right, my lovely Elias, would you like to, you've got a question you'd like to ask? Excuse me.
Well, she's going to have to type it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else have we got? Well, she types it up.
Yes, so she's got to type it. Okay. So basically, I'll go through it. There's 21 different types of birth. A big baby birth. Just quickly, because I do need to cover this before she asks a question. A big baby birth. A big baby, you know, normally 9 pounds or more, that I was and my son was. We are big thinkers. We're really out there, and we have very high expectations of other people. But most of all, we have high expectations of ourselves. And that can cause conflict with people because we don't sort of handle people that are fearful or, you know, shy away from things. And we have big ideas, and we're always bombarding people with these new and big ideas, and we're always chasing that next thing. And so our learning is to curb that. Okay, so there's born in the sack. Born in the sack births can be people that are very introverted, and they feel a little fearful to be creative and be who they really are. They have a bit of an identity crisis, and can often feel quite fearful going out into the world. They need a lot of coaxing to get out there and create. Breech births, often a breech birth push back. They're real kick-ass people, and they will do everything that you recommend not to do. And I got 2 children like that, and so you just don't tell them what to do. You got to be their friend, and you got to say, well, you know, I sort of experienced this, and it worked for me, or I don't know, maybe it's something you could do. And in the end, you're really telling them which way to go. But if you tell them what to do, they'll do the absolute opposite. So you got to be really careful with breech births, you know, because they'll do the absolute opposite, even if it's not right for them, or could end up going the wrong way. Cesarean birth, we covered that. You know, they feel things are taken away from them, even a planned cesarean. Conditions of the mother builds up a lot of guilt and shame in the baby. They feel totally responsible. They're scared that they could have killed their mother, and if the mother does die, it's horrific, because that child will be self-sabotaging and self-harming. They really need help with that. Also, the cord around the neck, we covered that, feeling a victim, feeling someone's out to get them. They feel sometimes they're told what to do, and they really dislike that because they feel that it could end in death, and it's inevitable, and someone's out to get them. Drugged births, very, very hard. With drug births, for them to get motivated. They can be very strong procrastinators, and they can get really stuck in learning and studying, and they just find sometimes they're daydreamers in school, and they can procrastinate because they just feel that they can't quite get past beyond a point, you know. Easy births, you know, some that are 2-hour labours, half their luck. 2-hour labours. I had 20 and 22, and I went at the last minute. So easy births, they feel very self-privileged. They feel the world is always out on a silver platter for them. Can be sort of high flyers, but a little bit disconnected in relationships. Similar to a fast birth as well. They haven't had to work too hard for things. Do you know what I mean? Because everything was easy, everything was fast. They haven't really learned the hard yard, which is character building. Forceps, you know, that's what we talked about, was forced to do things, no one's patient, no one really understands them. They find relationships difficult because they feel they can't make their own decisions. They're not left to make their own decisions. They can be introverted sometimes. But, you know, if they've got good parenting and especially a good relationship with their mother, they come good, you know. They just need love. They just need love, forceps babies. They just need love, compassion, love and tenderness, and lots of hugs, even if they walk away and don't like it. Just never not hug forceps babies, you know. It's cruel. They need more hugs than they need. Induced births. Similar to the forceps. Late birth, that person will be late for everything. I've had to work through this one. I was so overdue. Mum, I think, took castor oil or something, and I was like 2.5 weeks overdue, and I just didn't want to come because I thought, oh, this is going to be a shit world. And I'm a psychic medium, I'm a rebirther, I'm an energy healer, and I thought, oh, well, this is going to be a tough time. I don't really want to go, you know. So she's pouring down this castor oil. So, you know, a held-back birth, a delayed birth, or overdue, always late for everything. They hate being early because they just don't like to, you know, be told what to do and get on with it and get there. So I've had to work on that one. Now I'm on time. I'm never early, but I'm on time. So also a premature birth, they will be early for everything. They'll be an hour to 2 hours early. And I have some clients that are premature births. And I'm like, I have to tell them, if you come early, sit on the veranda and wait for me because I'm meditating before their appointment. I do that with all my clients. It doesn't matter what they're having, rebirthing, psychic medium work, whatever. I will meditate 20 minutes before they come in the room. So I'm really present with them and I know where they're at. And these premature clients, premature babies, they've not worked through it, and they're there an hour waiting. Come on, you know. So I say to Rama, give them a cup of tea, you know, but I won't take them earlier because it doesn't work with me. But they are so scared of being late because if they're late, they feel they're going to die. It stirs up their death urge, you know. And then twins, multiple births, they can be quite competitive. They really need to always feel supported. They always need to know someone's got their back, yeah, for obvious reasons. An unwanted birth, I deal with a lot of these. Unwanted birth, you know, they were told that they were going to be aborted, but then they changed their mind. So they never feel loved. They never feel accepted. They never feel understood. And I think this is about 80% of the population. The wrong sex birth, I covered. They will do their darndest to try and be that other gender in some way because they feel then that they'll be loved and accepted and they're good enough. So a wrong sex birth will never feel good enough.
Well, I know there's ectopic pregnancies, aren't there? They're born outside of the womb. What does that represent?
They will feel they're on the wrong planet.
I think a lot we could all say that.
Seriously. Some that I've rebirthed, because I've been doing this 23 years, I think I've rebirthed every single case, and they will feel that they're on another planet, that they should have been on some other planet, that they really are been born at the wrong time, wrong place, and they feel very, very connected to galactic beings. I know it's really interesting when you start getting down deep, and you see, you can't pretend in a rebirthing session, because it's all about the body. It's all about the subconscious. You're working with the cellular structure in the body. The ego can't come in. It just can't. It's got to take a back seat and sit on the veranda and wait, you know. So they feel that why are they here? The biggest question is, why am I here? What's my purpose? You know, what am I meant to be doing? I'm wasting my time here. And some of them check out. Some of them self-harm because they feel so disconnected to God, disconnected to other people and community. They either become homeless, they become, not all, but homeless, or introverted, live alone. They can be extremely self-sabotaging.
Is there any more questions, Jeff?
Yeah, there is, but I've got a question. What about females who don't have any maternal instinct to have children, and they quite happy to have a partner and carry on, but they just have no urge to procreate?
And there's quite a few of those, and that'll be because it'll be to do with their birth, and it could be that something happened to the mother. There was abandonment somewhere, and it would have been right from birth. There's abandonment somewhere, or they could be abused by the mother or father or step parent. And often they won't have children because they don't think they could cope. Sometimes they won't have children because they're afraid that DNA exchange will go on to the child they have, and they might end up abusing their child. I know, it's crazy, but this is what happens. But most often it's because that maternal instinct has not kicked in, even on a cellular structure. It's a DNA ancestral lineage issue. If it's not abandonment issue or abuse or fear that they're going to take on the abuse through the DNA from their parent, that they were abused, they're afraid they're going to hurt their child. I know a couple of my clients, they are celebrities, and they decided not to have children because they were so badly abused. They won't even adopt because they fear that they will not handle the child, and that something will come through in the DNA programming and they might harm them. It's really sad. It's really, really sad. But it's all about ancestral lineage as well, and it can come through in the DNA. And sometimes they'll be asked, why didn't you have children? They say, I don't know, it just didn't happen, or I couldn't have them.
Or what about, say, two daughters, the eldest says, no, don't want children, but the second one has children, and just a breeder. Yeah.
So two siblings or twins?
Two siblings, a couple of years gap difference.
Well, they're different souls, so they've reacted to the ancestral DNA, or the way they've been brought up, or how they were handled, because they're different souls. They're not one soul, and they've been born different times and different ways. Their birth trauma could have been very different from each other. That will affect how they build or allow a maternal instinct to develop.
So the eldest girl's really strongly connected to her father, but has no children. And the second daughter is so connected with the mother and has children. I mean, you can see that the family sort of split into two different camps.
Yeah, and that can be because the connection with the father can stir more of a masculine energy within her, and it doesn't stimulate the maternal instinct. Sometimes some daughters want to be like their dads, and that doesn't stir up the maternal instinct. So it can be emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical. There can be all those reasons why. So many different reasons why, but it all depends how their birth was. And their birth will determine their relationship with their father and their mother. And the one closer to the mother will be more maternal, because often we like to have a part of our parent in all different situations. And the one that didn't want children that's closer to the father will want to take on more of the father's attributes. And that doesn't, some men can be more maternal than women, but it all depends on their birth. It all comes down to the birth.
It's really interesting you say that, because the oldest daughter has the same physical body shape and structure. And the second daughter has got the same physical, so one's size 10 and the other one's about size 18, like a mother. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it'd be interesting to know their births, and I guarantee they would have been quite different pregnancies and different birth traumas.
Okay.
I've not known you to ask so many questions, Jeff. This is obviously a subject that you're really interested in. It's wonderful.
Well, it's a fascinating subject, and it's one that affects us all on some level or another. So
yeah. Oh, absolutely. We all have a birth experience, and we all find it fascinating. And we're so curious. Even the ego is curious. How, the ego's saying, how does it affect me? Because I'm impenetrable. I don't get affected by certain things. So the ego's curious, the soul is curious, the intuition is curious. Every aspect of us is curious how our birth trauma affects us in our life as we're living. So Elias and Tara has a question. When I birthed my son some years ago, it reactivated trauma in me. Yes, it can, of your birth trauma. It's quite sensitive, so I won't say too much on here. Can you say how this works in rebirthing? I have my own feelings why thus was triggered, including ancestral and past lives. Also, I picked up a lot of stuff from the midwife. It's a little hard not to know any more about it. It's a situation that I need to probably go into more on what happened. But what happens if we've had a dramatic birth ourselves? Sometimes when we're birthing a child, all of a sudden we've got this whole human being that we've got to tend to and take care of, and as a woman we're so vulnerable, and we're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to care for this little being? And so this is all part of postnatal depression and things like that. And when we're giving birth, it can bring up trauma that we've taken on our birth that was happening to our mother. So it'd be interesting to know how your birth was, and also Elias, how it was for your mother, because I feel very strongly and intuitively that it was traumatic for you when you birthed your son, because you had never resolved your own birth trauma or your mother's trauma through the birth. Because even though the birth trauma is about the baby, the mother goes through a trauma too, because it's extremely painful. And there's always such a drain on the body. It's an enormous drain on the body. And I feel very strongly that you were picking up not so much on the midwife and her emotions and the way she handled you. I feel she didn't hand you very kindly. And I feel that you were picking up on the trauma of your mother while she was giving birth to you. And it came up while you were giving birth to your son. Can you relate to that?
I will let that go. We'll move on.
Okay.
She'll answer that one. Next question.
Maria Rue, do you need to know the details of the birth? Sorry, I missed the start. It was covered. Details of the birth. Yeah, details are important because there's 21 different types of birth, of how to be born. Even though some will say I had a natural birth, there's trauma regardless. So it does help to know how your birth was, and it can affect why you've not had children. Now, some people want to have children but can't, and sometimes that can be birth trauma, and the body just doesn't want to conceive, and that can be birth trauma. We've helped a lot of women get pregnant, and naturally, by helping them to get through their birth trauma. And we also help with supplementation. And sometimes they need help on a physical level and an energetic level. And we help a lot of women that have been on IVF spend $10,000 and then have, do 10 sessions with me in a rebirthing, and then they fall pregnant because they've got rid of all that toxic energy that has affected how their eggs are produced, how the uterus or the colon is sitting on the uterus. And, we give them some herbs and help everything to rebuild the new cells, and voila, things happen. It's amazing. We don't proclaim to be birth people in the way of helping people to conceive, but it's happened. So Maria's saying, I had a very large fibroid, and it was so large I had to have a hysterectomy, also on most of life. Yeah, well, that you've obviously got some birth trauma going on. If you know how you were born, that can have a lot to do of can be a great support of how to work with you in a rebirthing. But if you don't, if no one knows about their birth, they've got no idea what happened when they were born and their mother's passed or their father's passed, that's okay. We find it all out in the rebirthing anyway. It all comes through. It all comes out. If I'm rebirthing someone and they've had the cord around their neck when they were born, their neck will go bright red. Or if they've had forceps when they were born, the marks will come up on the forehead. It's incredible.
Wow. I mean, we could go on and on talking
about it. Elias has come back with the answer there.
All right.
So Elias has come back with, yes, thank you. My mother always says she had a natural birth with me. I do feel things have been covered up. We don't have a good relationship as I've done more work than I've had to let go. She's telling you she had a natural birth because she wants to believe it was, and she doesn't want to talk about it. And a natural birth in her day was a natural birth, but that doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic. And she was quite detached in her birth with you. I can guarantee it. She was very detached and she just wanted to get it over with. So correct me if I'm wrong, but she just is quite a person who's quite detached, and she likes to bury stuff and just move on and get on with other things. She doesn't go too deep with things with you.
Hey, I just lost my question then, got taken away.
Well, I got one. No, I haven't got a question, but something you said. I don't know what happened to me when I was born. I got no idea. But I know I hate and will not wear polar neck jumpers up around my neck. I'd rather freeze because I just can't bear this restriction around my neck. So yeah. I thought, well, that's interesting because I didn't know that before. So
yeah. And when I rebirthed you back in Burleigh, I felt the cord was around your neck at least once, because you would have this cough, and and you're very vulnerable in the throat, and it's your Achilles heel. It's a very vulnerable area for you. And if ever you feel unwell or something's not right, you always feel it in the throat, don't you? It comes up as a nagging cough or a bit of phlegm, or glands are swollen, or it's irritated, that sort of thing. And I feel very strongly that the cord would have been round your neck, because I can see sometimes I've seen you upset at certain times when you're living here and would be going through different things, and something would have upset you, and you flare up around the neck and the cheeks and the neck, and they flare up and they go pink, and that's absolute definite signs of a cord around the neck. So sometimes you can feel overwhelmed, by certain things, and you just feel overwhelmed, and the glands will start to flare up. And if you wear big, thick, chunky necklaces, and I should have known better when I gave you that necklace when you left, because it was too chunky for you, and I should have known better. I didn't even think about it, because you won't wear it. It's just too heavy.
Funny, I brought it out this week. I was sorting through bits and pieces, and I got it there, and I thought, gosh, I've never worn that. So it's funny you should say.
Yeah, and it's a bit heavy for you. So, but you could wear it over a T-shirt that might just come, to this area here. You could ask someone to make it a bit longer, or take the cross off, I did. Yeah, take the cross off, lovey, and just wear the amethyst. And if it's not too high, you could wear it beautifully. But I should have known better. So definitely cord around the neck. And but I don't feel it was around 3 times. I feel it was only once. But it's enough for you to feel vulnerable in that area, and not like high collars.
Okay, I got my question. Hey, no, it's a really good question.
They all are great questions, guys. They're awesome.
Grandmother, got a child coming, haven't you? She goes off to see the fortune teller, teacup reader. There's a child coming. But you've said that for 2 months, that incoming child is with the grandmother. Now,
yes.
So we talk about family constellations and how it comes down through 7 generations. So
it's the grandmother of the mother. I just thought I'd say that. Grandmother
of the mother. Okay, so we've got the soul coming through in the grandmother, who's then embodying family traits of that generations, and then it's going to pop into basically the 3rd generation down, isn't it? Next one down. So is it embodying not only the grandmother and all the previous generations behind that, then it's taken on the young mother, and then it's coming through and has been born. So there's the aspect there of embodying that whole lineage of a soul family. Are you, when you're doing your rebirthing, are you jumping into the grandmother energy as well as the mother who birthed it?
I don't jump in as such, but often if the grandmother has passed, she will come into the session.
True.
And I will see her in spirit standing there, which happens often. And she will come around and be around my client doing their rebirthing session. If she's still alive, I will sense her energy and intuitively, and I'll just feel it on her breath. One thing I learned from Leonard, he was amazing. Sondra was really good on retreats and teaching the technique, but Leonard was quite amazing. When I spent time with him, he taught us to tune into the Holy Spirit of the person. The Holy Spirit, the soul, the Holy Spirit, the God within, and connect to the soul. And he would teach us how to listen to the Holy Spirit on their breath when they were breathing, so that we could sense ancestors, the lineage there, and what was an ancestral pattern that needed to be cleared. I can't explain it any other way. He just taught this through demonstration and through discourse. And I just connected with it straight away. And so if the grandmother will be there in spirit, I'll feel her, see her, sense her, and so will they. And they'll say, oh, you wouldn't believe it. I was breathing away there. And Granny May came through. Wow, haven't seen her for ages. You know, it was so lovely to see her. And of course, you know, I would see her before they did, and I knew they'd have an experience. So that can happen, yes. Yeah, very much so. But if they're still alive, I will sense and feel it on their breath. And if there's something to clear, then I'll help them through affirmations to clear that. Doesn't always happen, but it can do. Yeah.
Hey,
Honestly, everyone has such a different experience in rebirthing, and every rebirth a person has is never the same. It's different every time. I do 10 sessions with people, and they come weekly, and they say, oh my God, I don't know what I'm in for.
Yeah.
Oh, what next? What's it going to be like? And some are at the top of the street hesitating to come because they think, oh my God, what am I going to go through this time, you know? But then afterwards they're like, oh, I'm so glad that I pushed past my inhibitions of just they do feel a little exposed, and then afterwards they're like, oh, I'm so glad I did it. I feel amazing, you know. So the ego will have us stay in an old state of mind to control us. So when you start doing rebirthing, or I do a lot of different modalities, but I'm always so passionate with rebirthing, is the ego will try and keep you in the same place so it can control you. And so when we do rebirthing, the ego's like, oh God, I'm not going to go there because goodness knows it's going to kill me off. It's going to destroy me, that rebirthing, and I'm not going to be able to control that soul anymore. So I've got to let the ego know, I'm not going to kill you off. I'm not going to destroy you, but I'm going to allow the nature and the soul of my client to have all aspects be heard. And the ego goes, oh, okay, I can handle that.
Amazing.
Hey, talking about amazing, Andrena and I were in Adelaide, and we arrived at this, was it Penfold's Cottage, and there was a guy who took up residence there. He was a Dalai Lama's interpreter. He was now going back and reverting to Christopher, being an Anglo-Saxon name as opposed to his Tibetan name he was given. But what was fascinating was that in the 40s, his parents were actually avid Buddhist yoga people, breathing and doing all the breath work and all the other stuff. And they invoked the highest possible soul to come here to teach humanity. And so that was their thread that his father and mother created for him to come through. How often is that done? Have you come across that when you're rebirthing?
To be honest, I haven't. No, I don't recall going through that experience, but I have, or that exact experience, but I have had similarities of where someone has done a rebirthing and all of a sudden the energy of Jesus has come through. And so they've got messages from Jesus, and then sometimes there's been a message for me. And this person's never done anything like this before, but there's been an open channel, and they've seen Jesus and they've got a message, and then they've felt they've had to pass it on. And yet they're not really, people that have really done much on a spiritual plane, and then all of a sudden there'll be this amazing connection come through, and yet they've done nothing like this before. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Very good.
Okay. Yeah, but I haven't experienced that exact situation that you're asking, but I have experienced other situations where Babaji's come through, Jesus has come through, and it's just blown them away, you know. And they, of course, that's called a Kundalini experience, and it's quite overwhelming, and they're so humbled. It changes their life, you know. And they end up sobbing. They just sob and sob and sob and sob. And it ends up being such a dramatic change for them. They're never the same person. So that's happened.
Well, before we round up, I was just listening to something the other day, and I know a lot of before the soul comes into the body for birthing and what have you, a lot of the family members actually hold the soul, don't they, before it actually comes in, you know. So
yes. Yeah. And I know we're talking a lot about birth, but I need to also say that when a person is passing, their energy body is still working for them, and the energy body will do everything to keep that body alive until the last breath. And that's why when you notice, you know, you might be visiting someone in hospital and they're passing or whatever, or nursing someone, you'll see their hair still grow, their ears and nose will still grow, their nails will still grow, and yet they're passing, they're in palliative care or whatever, because the energy body is so powerful and it constantly will do anything to keep it alive. And so you'll see life force still happening in the body. And many morticians will tell you that they see the energy body still very strong in the body, and even after a person's passed.
Right. Well, on that note, it's been absolutely fascinating. I've loved listening and asking questions, and like it is such a diverse subject, and it's on so many levels. So it's been, really lovely. So I thank you very much for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom. And
oh, you're very welcome, and I'm grateful for the time you've given me. You're very generous, because it's not a subject you can whip in and out in an hour. You know, it's lovely, and thank you to all the listeners that have asked questions. I'm very grateful, and I've done a video today. I felt inclined to do a video about the breath and you know, working with and increasing the energy body. And I've done a meditation at the end of it. So I recommend, you know, everyone who wants to know more and actually experience doing a breath work meditation. It's a beautiful sacred renewal breath meditation that I've put it at the end of me talking about how the breath works. And we're going to be putting it up on my YouTube channel tonight. So the link is there. Jeff has got the link to put up. The YouTube channel is called I Am the Life I Love, because it really is about how you feel about yourself and the life that you create, and to be the life that you love is everything. And it's not just about living the life you love. You've got to be I am the life I love. And so that's the name of our YouTube channel. And hopefully tonight, definitely by tomorrow, that video will be up on the breath and the meditation, and I take you through a breathing session, and it's just indicating how the breath brings in so much life. It can resolve trauma, and there's a meditation at the end of it. It's like the whole thing is 30 minutes, but honestly, you'll love it. It'll help so many people, because that meditation they're going to get a healing experience from that. So I hope you enjoy that, and it's my love to everyone to help them resolve trauma.
Yeah, well, if you want to share it on my Facebook page as well, and I'll share the video again for people that haven't seen it. So no, I love your work. I've worked with you on many occasions, and you're doing a fantastic job. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Andrena. Thank you, Andrena. Thank you, Jeff. I love you guys. Namaste.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
I'll just say good day. Okay. Thank you for watching. Bloody bless you. We'll just we'll finalise the show now, and then we'll go back to the studio.